Guys, I'm really delighted to welcome to the podcast, actually for the first time, my friend Charlie Kirk, also Salem radio host and podcaster, and of course the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. Charlie has produced a remarkable documentary that's about the border. It's called Border Battle. And I haven't seen the documentary, but I've seen the trailer. But I want to welcome Charlie Kirk on the podcast to talk about it. Charlie, this is you're always expanding your portfolio, forging into new territory, launching all kinds of new projects. What got you interested in this topic of getting to the border and revealing what's really going on?
Yeah, I mean, I live in Arizona, and Turning Point USA is headquartered in Arizona, and we see firsthand what's happening on the border. We hear the stories, we see the carnage, we see the drugs, and I've been down to Nogales, I've been down to Yuma multiple times. And I'm always just kind of so disappointed at how the media portrays what's happening on the border versus what's actually happening. And even right-wing media gets it mostly right, but there's a deeper story at play of how the cartel is running this like a business, about how human beings are actually the ones that are being smuggled more than drugs, and all these different kind of layers to the story. And so I asked our team at Turning Point USA, like, hey, does this make sense for us to do? And because we had all the connections through the wonderful Sheriff Mark Lamb and Border Patrol. And so we raised some money to do this from a couple donors, and we embedded ourselves for 9 months in Border Patrol and local sheriffs. And we have firsthand footage that will blow you away, telling the whole story of what's really happening in the border. And so we decided, do we want to do a movie or do we want to do a series? Because, I mean, you're the movie master in the conservative space. We felt it would be better to kind of do a docu-series because it's so information rich. There's such a story to tell. And I think actually the American people have the patience to sit through a couple episodes right now and learn about how the cartels came to power, to learn about how they actually run these superhighways on the southern border, sometimes in collusion with local sheriffs, local DAs, or kind of a tacit, I won't look while you come across type thing. You know, we talk about the increase in Yuma, for example, where it used to be about a couple hundred people a day would cross the Yuma sector. Now it's 2,000 people a day, 2,000. And across the entire southern border, it's anywhere between 5,000 to 7,000 people a day that are coming into our country. So there's a lot of confusion about this. We try to clarify that and also motivate people to do something about it. So it's Border Battle. People can find it at salemnow.com. I think it's a terrific piece. We spent a lot of time and energy on it. And living in a border state, our argument is every single state in America has become a border state.
I mean, it's remarkable. It seems that the media was the only time they discovered the illegals was when they showed up in Martha's Vineyard or they showed up in New York. And then they were like, oh, wow, we can't believe that these people are showing up in our community. And yet Texas and Florida and Arizona, these border states have been taking large numbers of these illegals. Now, my question is this: what is the role of the Biden administration here? Is it they have to know? I'm not saying that they do Zoom calls with the cartels, but they have to know that this is a kind of a two-way operation in which the cartels deliver the human bodies to the border, and then the Biden administration lets them in.
Yeah, I mean, when I went down to Yuma, what was one of the most depressing things that I learned was how the Border Patrol said they're not allowed to do their job. And they walk through basically how they've become a paperwork processing center for Amnesty International. And this stuns people. It's that no longer do the illegals not want to get caught. Now, the ones that don't want to get caught, that means they're carrying something or they have a background and they're really bad. There's hundreds of thousands of those people. But the vast majority, the millions of the people that actually come into the country illegally, they just surrender themselves. They go straight into Border Patrol's hands. They go straight into DHS. They say, but you know, I'm seeking asylum. And under the new rules, under this administration, the facts are showing us that basically they're allowed free entry into the United States. They get cell phones. They sometimes get money for food. They get flown into the interior of the United States, to go do whatever they want to do. And then they get some paper that they, in a language they don't understand, English, of some court date in a year and a half or 2 years, like they're going to show up for that court date. So there's 5 million, 6 million people in the last year and a half that have court dates, and a vast majority of them are never going to show up for their court date for an asylum hearing. So they're here. And then not to mention they have children and anchor babies that then, of course, give their children citizenship. And next thing you know, the process continues forward. So yes, I mean, what's so shocking And this is something, I had a conversation with somebody the other day that is more of a political moderate, but I think an honest person and wants to find the truth. They said, Charlie, I just find it really hard to believe that our leaders want this to happen on the border. I said, oh, no, they do. Our leaders are intentionally allowing the invasion of our country. They want our sovereignty destroyed. They want the human beings to come into the country, I think, for political reasons, and they've admitted that. And whenever you say that, they say that's the great replacement. That's nonsense. Just listen to the Castro brothers. Listen to all these Democrat leaders that have said this for the last couple of years about how open borders favors their political aims and objectives. And so, look, what you'll learn about in border battle is two things: how bad the problem is, but how fixable it is. And that's what's so frustrating about it. This is not quantum physics, right? This is not trying to split the atom. It's very simple. You build a wall, you hire agents, more agents, you give them the ability with arrest authority, you reinstate Remain in Mexico, you get harsher on the Mexican government, even threatening tariffs like Donald Trump did, and say, if you're not actually going to enforce your side of the border, then you're going to have a penalty. The Mexican government has just basically put their hands up and said, well, if you guys don't want to do anything, then we won't do anything. And the result is 5 or 6 million new illegal people in our country minimum. It very well could be more than that.
I mean, I even read somewhere that the Mexican government is providing a sort of a transit visa. So if people show up at the Mexican border on the other side, the Mexicans go, hey, listen, we'll give you safe passage over to the U.S. border. It's really not, but they don't allow them to stay in Mexico. That's the point. No. Mexico actually protects its own border against citizens coming from other countries into Mexico.
Yeah, that's right. This could be fixed in one afternoon. Donald Trump saw this scam and he called up Honduras and Nicaragua, Guatemala and Mexico and used the strength of America and said, you're all going to get tariffs. You're not going to get, and every time you call me and ask me for something from a natural disaster, you're not going to get it. And we saw border crossings go down. Huge, Dinesh. Now, was it totally fixed? No, but we were talking about in Trump's last year, and I'm just kind of, going off the top of my head, I think it was 400, 500,000 people that came across the border. And then a lot of them were then deported after, because of Remain in Mexico. We're talking about 2.5 to 3 million a year. And these are just guesstimates, by the way, Dinesh. When you go down there, we have pictures of swarms of people. We're talking 2,000 people in one night that come across one sector. How are you supposed to process that? And there's another part of the film that people will see, and they'll be able to see it at salemnow.com, of what's called the dump zone. So there's an area where they call them migrants. I call them border jumpers and line cutters. They'll come and they'll dump their IDs and dump their ability to trace who they are. And so there's this massive garbage pile that I go through and our documentarians and our team goes through. And what we see is IDs from Iran, IDs from Afghanistan, IDs from Azerbaijan, IDs from Syria, IDs from Russia. So as soon as they drop their ID and they go around the corner, because there's a barrier there, right? But it's kind of a joke, to be honest. They go around the barrier. As soon as they then claim asylum, you can't even go back to get the ID to correlate them. Then you don't know who they are. And so, let's just use some rational thinking. By the way, we know that legit terrorists are crossing the southern border. DHS report has said that. You have people from all these Arab countries in the Middle East that are surrendering their IDs. Why? Maybe because through a background check or at least one, Interpol check through some sort of either European or Asian, database, they might have committed crimes in that native country. They might be rapists or criminals or murderers. So it's really bad, Dinesh. And that alone, when I tell people, they can't believe it. There are thousands of these IDs just dropped, and that's just one sector in Yuma. So what they do, and I think it's funded I know it's funded by NGOs. I don't know how deep that is. We try to prove it in the film, but that's, we would need subpoena power to figure some of this out. They fly to Mexico City through whatever international way, and then they take a bus to Mexicali, and then they go to Yuma and they just cross the border. It's all mapped out for them. And so the cartel, it's a business. They charge them like $1,500 a head. And you will see in the film across the border, one car every 100 yards of cartel people with binoculars directing foreigners to go into the country as if they're air traffic control at O'Hare Airport in Chicago.
Unbelievable. Let's take a pause. We'll be right back with Charlie Kirk.